Before I call on our key speakers, recognize ko lang yung dumating pa nating media friends. Val Gonzalez of DZRH, and then Kathy Cruz of Katipunan Channel, and DWL representatives Juby de Guzman and Victor Salonga. Okay, at this point, let's start our discussions on exports, supply chains, and digitalization. I'll call on the first speaker. He is Mr. Tom Medina of Grants Exports Incorporated. Please welcome Mr. Tom Medina. You have the floor.
Hi, good morning everyone. Thank you, Doy, and President Danny, and of course, Vice President Ernie. Ernie, maraming salamat for nice segue to the discussion. My company is one of at the forefront of what we call export consolidation, and we have an association called the Philippine Export Service Providers and Consolidators Association. Our group, composed of more than 300 active consolidators, mixes different MSME products into one container for a single buyer. So we are not forwarders in the sense that we put in different products for different people in one container, just like how a reverse function of a balikbayan box does. But we only serve one client for every container or air shipment that we do. And this is the main function of consolidators. So, in talking about the exports, let me share this with you, and maybe some of you have requested me to touch on a little bit with the challenges that we are facing. First and foremost, kagaya ng sinare ni Katan, exporting means to create that balance of trade. And unfortunately, we're now ranked number 5 in ASEAN, with Singapore at the top and the other top 6. No? So, isa na lang notch pa tayo. Same way that our coconut exports have been. Our coconut positioning is now number 3, if not going to be number 4 by next year. So, para sa amin po, if the government says 99.5% or 98% of total enterprises belong to MSMEs, and only about 3% are actually, or 2%, a little over 2% are with the large corporations. It is also mentioned by statistics, quoted in most of the trade data, na that 3% contributes actually 60% of total revenue of enterprises. And the 99% only contributes 30%. So that is a very, very strong and striking imbalance with regards to the positioning and sustainability of the MSMEs. Now, as Kadani also mentioned, we have been earmarking for more exports. But why is it that it is not growing? Simply because the ease of doing business in the Philippines has not been addressed thoroughly. In the last DTI and EA and other multi-agency fora that we have attended, we have been trying to solve the issues of not only supply chain but even with DA on the supply of the raw materials and other issues confronting us. We have found out that there is an issue of convergence and congruence. Convergence on the policies and congruence of programs. Meaning, most of the government agencies now, just like what Kadani said, lacks the promotional efforts on our products. No? And so what happens is that even if somebody came up with a very nice idea, say for example, one of the products we've been getting is a pure calamansi without pulp and sugar, nobody's been highlighting it. And so what happens is that it doesn't get to where it should be. You see, and we have salted egg and we have salted egg potato chips which has caught up with the market, but nobody has been highlighting it because there is no money behind. And sadly though, our salesmen at the forefront of government agencies have not learned their lessons on how to properly market and reach out what product should go to overseas Filipinos and what could possibly go to mainstream markets. We have been largely at the forefront of private labeling and bulk raw material basis production of our agricultural products. And therefore, this has not placed a map for the Philippines. Now, you will tell me, what is the significance of consolidators? Kagaya nga ng sabi ni Katani, I can put 20 small manufacturers in one container or even 50. And that would give them exposure at the very least to the overseas Filipino market, which is, if we don't serve, is being served by Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam. These three countries have copied the preferred profile of snacks and condiments that we are producing at a more competitive price. Now, given that situation, that we have these small enterprises being given the exposure through consolidation, another thing that we address is the development of new products for the market. If you go to the supermarkets today, whether here or abroad, in the United States, in the small stores in Europe, even in Japan, or even in Australia, what you will find in the shelves are the same products copying each other. From the granule-based seasoning, you have at least 6 brands. On condiments, you have at least 12 or 15 brands. On the bottled preserves, the nata de coco for halo-halo, you have what? 25 brands. In the United States alone, there are 20 brands. Imagine there is nothing that we have come out when in fact Thailand has come up with canned rambutan, they have come up already with canned nata de coco, which is now, by the way, being private label and imported by a large national brand of a seafood product, isn't it? So my point is that if you don't give exposure to our small MSMEs, then there will be no more growth, no more new products coming out, and the Philippines will have no future in the world arena in as far as product development is concerned. We will never grow up. The reason why we have not been able to export canned coconut milk, when in fact we don't consume as much, is because we have never been competitive in the cost of tin cans, because our importation of tin cans is only 1/10 that of Thailand. And so the main concern is not the cost of coconut, but the main cost of the cans itself, the packaging itself. We can produce good quality, and we're happy that some products have, or some companies have come up with that competitive edge. We are now serving some of the mainstream supermarkets. But when will we have that convergence and congruence for us to be able to tap our potential? We have, I tell you, one thing that sells very well in the export market is coconut chips produced in Thailand. We don't consume that much coconut, but we don't produce also that much coconut chips. Our coconut chips, flavored at that or seasoned, is only very small, but the production in Thailand goes in the hundreds of containers just for one major brand buyer in Europe and America. So why can't we, when in fact we as a people don't consume that much coconut? Because our MSMEs are limited to product exposure, to R&D, to product development. Look at our condiments. We have not also gone as far as going into the spicy side, when in fact, what is the lesson of Korea catching up with Japan? Korea learned to copy properly what Japan was doing very well in the 70s and the 80s. And therefore, you find the Koreans leading now in the 90s, 2000s up to today. It's the same with the film industry and the television industry, isn't it? So my point is, consolidation brings forth not only revenues, the dollars that we need, but we give employment. We guarantee that employment for a lot of people. We, as I mentioned, we are now roughly about $1.5 billion in total and employ more than 200,000 workers directly, together with our casual workers. Not to mention the extension of the support services that we employ. So my point is, I would like to ask government to please create policies that will help and facilitate exports. One thing that is challenging us today is the value-added tax imposed by the CREATE law on indirect exports. So what happens is that since our peso has devaluated at about 20% vis-a-vis the dollar, and you added 12%, and the cost of imported inputs is about 70%, you will find the Philippine products at least 25% more expensive than its neighboring countries. So we cannot produce some products which we get at the same price level because we are imposed on this with these regulations. So there's no way for, and then the government says, anyway, the aid gives you a window for refund. Let me remind you that because we are in the thick of discussion with this during the pandemic in 2021 on the BIR revenue 2020, Memorandum Order 9/2021, they gave a window for refund. The problem is they threw at us a 10-page refund procedure. So if you have any issues, a love letter from the BIR, you cannot refund it. How can I convince my foreign buyer or my overseas Filipino buyer to say, pay back, and then I will try to refund you whenever and if ever at how much I can get? This hampers the total development of our export industry, especially the MSMEs. They really struggle because none of these brands, that's why you see a lot of small producers, be it snacks or condiments, specialty biscuits, candies, they could not compete. Why? Because of the raw material inputs. Sugar, as you might noticed today, DA has already released the price at about 90 pesos. So it will come out to about 95 pesos for the producers and for the retail market. So how much will our product cost when all of our products are sugar laden? Our packaging is not available. That's why, in comparison to our neighboring countries, all of our products from bagoong to preserves to coconut jam and what else is in that bottle, even peanuts and coconut sugar are using the same bottles. And therefore, no character for it to get to the mainstream market, which has a potential. If we export in bulk and become just an ingredient, we get less. If we export under private label, we get less. And a lot of products now, because of the challenges of the pandemic and the inflation and the geopolitical order now in the world, is bringing down to a commodity level of pricing for most of our high-value products. A year back, you can still sell coconut water at $1.10 per liter. Now, the major brands, which I will not mention, worldwide, are asking for 70 cents. Imagine what would be left to our producers who have invested a lot into certification, into production, into facilities, and what would be left to the poor farmer. So, I enjoin you to join the consolidators' cause in reaching out to government to create programs not only on raw material supply, packaging, support for promotions, but as well as the imposition or the elimination of the imposition of 12% VAT on indirect exports. Because none of these small producers can go to the market if we will be charged at 12%. It is not going to my pocket, it is not going to the farmer's pocket, nor the producer's market, but it will create a price level which the market will not be able to accept anymore. And thus, in a matter of a few more months, with the challenge of the inflation and recession abroad, we will see a lot more MSMEs closing shop. This is the sad plight. So, much as the DOF has confirmed that there was an oversight on the imposition of VAT on indirect exports, to do that corrective legislation with Congress will take another 2 years. And so the only avenue that the consolidators and the indirect exporters, from handicrafts to food to personal care, is if we will be included by the BOI, the Board of Investments, in its strategic investments priority plan for 2023, thus relegating the consolidators group and indirect exporters to become VAT-free upon purchase of these goods from the MSMEs. Now, let me share to you that the consolidators, aside from just purely on a trading basis, because sometimes the government does not appreciate the trading basis position of the consolidators, let me enumerate to you and exemplify to you that as consolidators, we spend on the marketing, the compliance, the documentation, certification, promotions of all of these MSMEs. We help them design better labels. We spend for their shipment cost. We travel for them just to push the product that we believe would have a potential either on the mainstream or the Filipino markets abroad. If you go to Saudi Arabia, all the callo removers, the callo skin removers are made in the Philippines under a private label. But why does it not grow so much? Because it does not have the support. Now the buyers have said, Tom, we will stop buying these callus removers from the Philippines because Thailand is offering it at a much cheaper price. Why is it that the sense of one famous guy cannot now go to and open new markets? Because that famous scent guy started with consolidators. And now if he sells to us, he has to add 12% VAT. So how will you open Africa? How will you open Eastern Europe, Central Asia, which are new markets for us, or even India for this matter, which has potential for niche Filipino products because of our shared profile of products and taste that could not be addressed by the government. When have we started exporting? Why do we not understand it until today? So for me, I really put forward this question to government and say, will you really is MSMEs really at the forefront of your agenda and the development of the industries? Or are we saying we are just doing band-aid solutions and banner programs to say that we are busy doing something for our government, for our people, and for our MSMEs? The large corporations can definitely afford it. But even them, they are suffering now. Because these large corporations cannot also go to new markets without the trial orders that are coursed through consolidators like me. And then when you say agricultural products, Mr. Doy Salakop is witness to this. Somehow our sabang, mango, calamansi, fresh products are being exported through consolidators in big centers going as far as the Middle East to Saudi Arabia, Libya, and Lebanon. But now, how can you support that when in fact we would have to be added certain VAT if there is a little processing involved? So, gentlemen and ladies, my point is, yeah, you do not have to look far because Mondelisin, Century Pacific, Oishi have all transferred San Miguel have all transferred their production outside of the Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia. And let me remind you what happened in the 90s. In the 90s, if you go to the Middle East, you will see the logo of Silver Swan. And I will say this, I will mention the brand because at that time, the original owner of Silver Swan had an issue with a Middle Eastern buyer. That they copied the logo, had it produced in Thailand. Now, because of this discouraging situation for exporters, some of our exporter members and some of the other exporter traders are going to Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia because it will be far easier for them to have the nata de coco, the bagoong, the snacks, the fish cracker that we like, the pancit canton and pancit bihon produced out of all of these countries without the necessity of adding fat. So one member of mine already opened shop in Singapore, the other one opened in Thailand, another one's opening in Vietnam, another one is transferring to Myanmar. I mean, look at dried mangoes. Our dear Mr. Justin Noy of Pro Food International has already opened a larger facility in Myanmar. Or Cambodia rather. Why? The ease of doing business, the cost of raw materials, the support from the government is there in Cambodia. So, whether you are a large agricultural producer or a personal care manufacturer, just like the scent guy or somebody who does whitening, how can they grow? You know that whitening soap would have a Japanese look of the packaging has a potential of going to China.
Yes.
But simply because the development of that brand has to course through guys like us. Now the Chinese said, sorry, your price is very expensive. You have, because manufacturer has to add VAT. And the Chinese people said, we would like to try first how we will move because we will be spending a lot of money developing the brand.